A serene voice echoed in Lin Dong's mind, a voice whose age was impossible to discern. Upon hearing it, Lin Dong's expression shifted. Reacting instinctively, he pulled back the fist he had just thrown and scanned the surroundings, searching for the source of the voice. Because Lin Dong retracted his punch, the Sun Elder, who had narrowly avoided being hit, brushed past him. Seizing the opportunity, the Elder retreated and cast a glance around, searching the chaotic void where Lin Dong stood. However, he failed to spot anyone who had spoken. This was the first time Lin Dong had ever heard such a voice. It was an unfamiliar voice, meaning the speaker wasn't present here. The people here were not unfamiliar to Lin Dong. So, who was speaking to him? Get away. Stay as far as possible from these memory bodies. As far as possible. The voice echoed again in Lin Dong's mind. Memory bodies? Lin Dong was taken aback upon hearing the words, but for some reason, he felt an inexplicable trust in the voice. Without hesitation, he moved at his fastest speed to distance himself from the so-called memory bodies. Are they real? After retreating a few thousand feet from the memory bodies, Lin Dong stopped and asked, "Don't stop. Since they are your memory bodies, no matter how far you move away, they won't be separated from you for too long." The voice replied, "You must maintain your distance from them." Got it. Although Lin Dong didn't fully understand the situation, he continued moving, staying cautious of anything that might approach him. Of course, he was still trying to locate the source of the voice. There's no need to search. I'm in the Great Thousand Worlds. The voice provided another hint. In the Great Thousand Worlds? Lin Dong was clearly shocked by this revelation. Don't worry about these messy details. Focus on understanding your current situation first, the voice urged. My situation? Lin Dong asked, confused. You are still in the trial, the voice continued. And your current situation is the third move of Long Luzi's technique. This move is specifically designed to target the heavenly soul. However, something unexpected has happened, causing this third move to be altered by some rule, to the point that even Long Luzi himself is unaware. What rule? Lin Dong asked. The Thunder Demon Bell in Long Luzi's possession was once owned by a Saint Emperor from the extraterritorial Evil Clan during the world-ending war. This object was tampered with by the extraterritorial Evil Clan's Slaughter ancestor over 40,000 years ago. In other words, the Slaughter ancestor added a rule to the Thunder Demon Bell. A rule? The mention of this term reminded Lin Dong of a phrase in the Great Thousand Worlds. Break the rules, strive for control. The establishment of this rule was so covert that neither I nor the Ancient Ones discovered it over these thousands of years. However, it has now been confirmed, the voice explained. This is an opposing rule. After that Saint Emperor was slain, the rule remained hidden within the Thunder Demon Bell. Perhaps even the Slaughter ancestor forgot about it. But now that Long Luzi has taken control of the bell, the Slaughter ancestor has evidently remembered the rule he left behind, and it has been activated. What is the opposing rule? Lin Dong asked. The opposing rule forces the person to face themselves. The scope is broad. The memory bodies you see now are the result of this opposing rule, the voice elaborated. Are they illusions? No, in a sense, they are real beings, not hallucinations. These memory bodies are direct representations of your own memories. They are the materialization of what is in your mind. If you attack them, you will be destroying your own memories. The purpose of this rule is to induce you to attack your own memories, leading to self-harm. The result will damage your heavenly soul, and if it goes too far, your heavenly soul may completely dissipate. Hiss. Lin Dong inhaled sharply, then asked, Did those who took the trial before me also experience this rule? Those before you never even made it to the final 3 trials. You are the second person to reach this stage. The first was Long Luzi, but his 3 moves were cast by an elder of the true Dragon Clan. However, the final soul attack was not activated using the Thunder Demon Bell, because Long Luzi was the first person in tens of thousands of years to gain control of it. No one had ever forced him to use the bell in battle. So, am I the first person to trigger this rule? Lin Dong asked, surprised. Yes, more or less. Then why are the memory bodies showing people who are still alive? Lin Dong inquired further. That's a simple question, the voice responded. You consider the living as existent, while those who have fallen are non-existent. The world of memories is so strange. This was Lin Dong's first time seeing the world from his own memories, this chaotic world. Perhaps even Long Luzi himself doesn't know that the move he activated for you would cause such trouble. I'm afraid that even a perfected heavenly supreme coming here would be unable to leave. If they don't attack those memory entities, they would remain here forever, entangled with them. But if they attack them, it's self-inflicted harm. Heh, this rule is really hidden deep. If we hadn't noticed in time, another great pathwalker would have unknowingly been erased. So, what exactly is the real third move? Lin Dong asked. If the rule currently triggered isn't Long Luzi's true third move, what was Long Luzi's original attack? Long Luzi's third move has already been altered by the rule, so the original attack no longer exists. Then what about me now? Now, what you need to do is break this rule. How do I break it? Lin Dong was stunned. If even a perfected heavenly supreme couldn't do anything about this rule, how could he possibly break it? Ordinary people, no matter how powerful they become, can't break it. But for someone like you, who has already touched upon the path of the sacred drum, there is a way. A way? All who walk the great path gradually give up their spiritual energy. The closer one gets to the end of the great path, the more they must give up. The difference between humans and the heavens lies here. Humans and other beings cultivate spiritual energy, which is inherently against the will of heaven, often resulting in calamities from heaven and earth. But the great path is a way that aligns with heaven. To walk the path of heaven, one must first understand what heaven is. Heaven represents the rules. Those who wish to change the rules can never truly change them. The ones who really change the rules are those who least want to. Heaven doesn't care about anything. So, those walking the great path must undergo a transformation of mindset that doesn't care about anything. The voice continued, if you can abandon all of your existence memories, as you once abandoned your spiritual energy to perform the sacred drum technique, then you will be able to break this opposing rule. Abandon all my existence memories? Lin Dong was stunned upon hearing this. If he gave up these memories, what would be left of him? It seems you still haven't truly understood the meaning of abandonment. The abandonment here is not real abandonment, but temporary abandonment. Just like how you gave up your spiritual energy to use the sacred drum technique, later, recalling your memories will be just like calling upon the spiritual energy of heaven and earth once again. The voice continued, how do you know I control the sacred drum technique? Heh, in this vast universe, knowing anything is as easy as flipping through a book. Who are you? Lin Dong asked, the question he was most curious about. He felt as though he was conversing with an omnipotent being. I am the ancestor of 10,000 spirits, the creator of the true Dragon God Emperor's relic space. The voice replied. Inside the desolate dragon space, a massive pit several 100,000 feet in diameter was clearly visible. The tremors that had lasted for several minutes had long since ceased. Under the destructive vibrations capable of damaging both matter and soul, everything within a radius of tens of thousands of feet from the area covered by the heavenly demon bell had become blurred, including the space itself, which had been completely disrupted. At this moment, high above the massive pit, Long Luzi's figure hovered in midair. He looked down at the area covered by the heavenly demon bell. Since the space there had been completely disturbed, he could no longer sense whether Lin Dong, who was within it, was still alive. But Long Luzi knew that he had completed the third strike. Whether Lin Dong could survive in that completely chaotic area depended on his own fortune. Long Luzi waved his sleeve, and the massive heavenly demon bell, several thousand feet in size, transformed from its transparent state back into a visible one. It then swept up toward Long Luzi and shrank into his body. This was the first time Long Luzi used the heavenly demon bell on someone else. He wasn't sure how much power it would generate, but he knew this was his strongest strike in terms of his soul cultivation. Buzz. Even though Long Luzi had retracted the heavenly demon bell, the chaotic area below remained in extreme disarray. The buzzing sound still hadn't completely ceased. In this situation, Long Luzi chose to wait, while he reported the situation here to the true dragon god emperor far away. Ancestor, Lin Dong successfully withstood the last 2 trials, but the result of the 3rd trial is still unknown. Incredible! The words reported by Long Luzi left the true dragon god emperor in disbelief. He knew that Lin Dong's own strength had not yet reached the perfected Earth Supreme stage, and after completing the previous trials, Lin Dong was nearly depleted of energy. Yet, in such a condition, he had somehow endured Long Luzi's 2 attacks. It was truly unbelievable. Ancestor, I'm worried. He might meet with an accident? Long Luzi said. He knew that Lin Dong had been forcing himself during the final strike. Sigh, let's leave it to fate, the true dragon god emperor replied. Next, Long Luzi looked down at the chaotic area, waiting for any hint of consciousness to emerge from it. During this time, half an hour swiftly passed. In this half hour, the chaotic space within the area had been mostly restored by the natural forces of the world, and the buzzing sound had also ceased. The only noise now coming from that area was the sound of the wind, but it was this calmness that made Long Luzi's gaze grow solemn. Because at this moment, Lin Dong's presence hadn't appeared in the slightest. Martial ancestor Lin Dong, have your methods, your luck, come to an end here? Looking at the now mostly calm area, Long Luzi sighed. He had prepared himself for this outcome, but if Lin Dong truly perished in that 3rd strike, Long Luzi couldn't help but feel regret. It really was a pity. After all, no matter what, Lin Dong was someone walking the path of the great Tao. A person like him was, without a doubt, far more valuable to the great 1,000 worlds than even a perfected heavenly supreme. If Lin Dong succeeded, it would be a great fortune for the entire world. But if he failed, it would be a loss for the entire world. Thinking this, Long Luzi couldn't help but reflect on whether his earlier actions had been too reckless. Should he have informed the higher-ups of the clan from the beginning to handle the situation? Long Luzi decided to continue waiting. Time passed again, nearly half an hour. Still holding on to a glimmer of hope, Long Luzi continued to wait for a miracle. But during this time, the chaotic region below had completely settled, and after using his sensing power to probe the area for several minutes, Long Luzi finally gave up. Lin Dong's aura, not even a trace, was nowhere to be found. Has he finally failed? Long Luzi sighed, and his words were conveyed to the true dragon god emperor from afar. Not even a trace of consciousness left? The true dragon god emperor sighed upon hearing this. What a pity. Ancestor, I need to head to the martial realm. At least this news can't be hidden from them, Long Luzi said to the true dragon god emperor. Also, this matter should be known to someone from the Ice Spirit clan. With that, Long Luzi turned to leave, preparing to fly back to the dragon pillar to bid farewell to the true dragon god emperor. However, just as Long Luzi turned around, an unexpected scene suddenly unfolded. Boom! As Long Luzi turned, a thunderous sound suddenly came from the sky behind him, and at the moment the thunder rumbled, the entire sky of dragon space darkened, and strange dark clouds rapidly spread across the entire space, as if a celestial phenomenon had occurred. The sudden change caused Long Luzi to pause, while the true dragon god emperor, far away, also felt astonished. As they both looked at the strange celestial phenomenon, their expressions shifted from regret to surprise. The celestial phenomenon was not caused by either Long Luzi or the true dragon god emperor. Their first reaction was that a miracle had occurred, and the cause of this phenomenon might be a sign that Lin Dong had survived. Long Luzi halted his movements and turned his gaze toward the darkened sky behind him. After scanning the area for a moment, his focus locked onto the previously chaotic region. Long Luzi began to sense some kind of force gathering in that area. The energy fluctuations grew rapidly, and in just a few breaths, it expanded to a level comparable to an Upper Earth Supreme. But then Long Luzi's expression became even more serious. After reaching the level that matched Lin Dong's, the force didn't stop. Instead, it broke through the perfected Earth Supreme threshold and continued to surge toward the heavenly supreme level. Lin Dong could not possibly have such power, at least not now. A terrifying force gathered in front of Long Luzi, and as he had anticipated, This power had directly broken through the bottleneck of the perfected Earth Supreme level and reached the Heavenly Supreme tier. However, even after reaching the Heavenly Supreme level, the energy didn't stop expanding. Instead, it continued to rise, and after just a few breaths, it reached the terrifying level of a lower Heavenly Supreme. How is this possible? Feeling the horrifying surge of energy, Long Luzi's face was filled with shock. His astonishment wasn't just because the aura had skyrocketed to the level of a lower Heavenly Supreme. It was because he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity with the overwhelming force. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying aura enveloped the entire dragon space, and this power had already far surpassed Long Luzi. When a middle-aged figure materialized at the center of that power, Long Luzi's pupils immediately contracted in shock upon seeing the familiar face. It was none other than his father, the current true Dragon Emperor. As Long Luzi was still in disbelief, the figure before him had already risen to the true perfected Heavenly Supreme level. The power emanating from him was so immense that with just the slightest miscalculation, it could shatter the entire dragon space into pieces. However, Long Luzi didn't truly believe that the person before him was his father, because if it were truly his father, the bloodline within him would have reacted. But at that moment, his bloodline gave no response to the figure in front of him. Clearly, this was a fake person with the same aura and power as his true Dragon Emperor father. "Who are you?" Long Luzi asked, his voice serious as he looked at the figure that claimed to be the true Dragon Emperor. "Heh, you don't even recognize your own father? Looks like you need a lesson." The figure, appearing as the true Dragon Emperor, seemed a bit surprised. He hadn't expected that Long Luzi, his own son, wouldn't recognize him. Was he joking? Of course, the current true Dragon Emperor knew full well that Long Luzi was a rebellious and free-spirited individual, so it was entirely possible that Long Luzi was just playing around with him. In that case, the old rules applied. Time to teach him a lesson. Boom. A powerful aura, reaching the perfected Heavenly Supreme level, exploded from the current true Dragon Emperor's body. As usual, when it came to disciplining his son, he never held back. He didn't even care about the shattered sky above caused by his own energy. "Are you really my father?" Long Luzi asked, feeling the terrifying aura erupt from the figure in front of him. After confirming that this wasn't his father, he regarded the figure as a dangerous enemy. He immediately summoned all of his power. Since the sky above had already been broken by the figure's aura, Long Luzi channeled the spiritual energy from outside the dragon space. This energy was far beyond what he had used against Lin Dong. The clash between a perfected Heavenly Supreme and a super powerhouse comparable to a lower Heavenly Supreme was incredibly intense. The combined forces were unimaginable in their power. As Long Luzi channeled the energy of the heavens and earth from outside the dragon space, the sky above was completely torn open, and the spiritual energy he summoned formed an enormous tidal wave of energy, hundreds of thousands of feet tall, surging toward the current true Dragon Emperor. Boom, boom, boom. The tidal wave of spiritual energy, carrying a force that would send even the lower Heavenly Supremes into a panic, crushed layers of space and engulfed the current true Dragon Emperor below. But the true Dragon Emperor merely raised his hand dismissively and waved it at the spiritual energy tidal wave above. As soon as the true Dragon Emperor waved his hand, a terrifying and indescribable power instantly froze the tidal wave in midair. Then, with a downward motion of his palm, the vast wave of energy shattered like broken crystal, falling from the sky and being instantly evaporated by some unknown force. The dragon space was now completely saturated with spiritual energy. Long Luzi wasn't surprised that his attack had been so easily countered. After all, his father, the true dragon clan leader, had always been capable of feats like this. No matter who you are, anyone who pretends to be my father is an enemy of the true dragon clan. Long Luzi snorted coldly, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Clearly, Long Luzi was about to unleash his strongest spiritual energy attack, the devouring sky dragon palm, just like when he faced Lin Dong earlier. As a supreme technique from the Dragon Codex, The devouring sky dragon palm was Long Luzi's most powerful move when infused with spiritual energy. However, just as Long Luzi prepared to activate the offensive move from the Dragon Codex, a voice that sent a tremor through his heart suddenly echoed in his mind. Brother Long Luzi, don't attack that person. He is a memory form created by the rules. The voice, which seemed to come from nowhere, caused Long Luzi to freeze in shock. It was Lin Dong's voice. That is a memory form created by the rules. When the voice resounded in Long Luzi's mind, just as he was about to use the Dragon Codex, he was stunned. For this voice came from none other than Lin Dong, who had just been confirmed as dead moments ago. You're still alive? Long Luzi glanced around at the world around him, but as always, he could sense no trace of Lin Dong's presence. For some reasons, I can't materialize my heavenly soul right now. Lin Dong's voice sounded again in Long Luzi's mind. What was that memory form you had earlier? After confirming that Lin Dong was still alive, Long Luzi quickly suppressed his astonishment and asked, "Who is the person imitating my father?" It's not an imitation, but a true materialization of a memory form. If you attack him, you'll cause self-destructive damage to your own memories. Long Luzi's pupils constricted sharply. Lin Dong's words were unbelievable, hard to fully comprehend, but Long Luzi's mind was quick to react. In an instant, he understood the basic meaning. The current true Dragon Emperor who had appeared was a materialization of his own memories. Essentially, Long Luzi was battling against his own memories, and any injury to either side would ultimately harm himself. But why had his memories manifested in such an eerie way? The demon bell in your hand was tampered with by a supreme being from the extraterritorial evil clan many years ago. When you activated the bell, some of the powers buried within it were unleashed. I've faced a similar rule-based power before, and it is invincible, Lin Dong's voice continued. What should I do? Long Luzi asked. That is a materialization of your own memories. So, if you give up on those memories, it will automatically become ineffective. Give up my memories? Long Luzi froze again, suspecting that Lin Dong was joking. It's not about truly abandoning them, but temporarily giving them up, just like temporarily abandoning your spiritual energy. How long do I have to give them up? A moment of breathing time is enough. While Long Luzi was conversing with Lin Dong, the current true Dragon Emperor, in the distance had already gathered his most powerful strike. The move was identical to the one Long Luzi had previously used from the Dragon Codex. Clearly, as the ruler of the true Dragon clan, Long Luzi's father had the qualifications to study the Dragon Codex. The spiritual energy ocean unleashed by the current true Dragon Emperor was boundless, and the fluctuations emanating from it were far more terrifying than Long Luzi's. If such a strike were fully formed, very few in the Great Thousand Worlds could withstand it. For in Long Luzi's memories, his father was one of the top 10 strongest beings in the Great Thousand Worlds. Heh, brat, quickly beg for mercy, and I might consider sparing you. The current true Dragon Emperor grinned at Long Luzi from afar as he cast the Dragon Codex technique. No one could have anticipated that Long Luzi's father would treat his own son with such a mixture of amusement and cruelty. Boom. The enormous spiritual energy ocean, as it expanded with just a slight shift, shattered most of the dragon space. The earth rumbled as it collapsed, and the surrounding space began to crumble. Then, as a pull appeared within the ocean of spiritual energy, the devouring sky dragon palm began to fully take shape. As the devouring sky dragon palm formed, Long Luzi, standing in the distance, showed no sign of retreating. Following Lin Dong's instructions, he would temporarily give up his memories, which was the most effective method for dealing with the situation. Long Luzi slowly closed his eyes, and his consciousness immediately descended into his heavenly soul, attempting to locate the place within his soul where his memories were stored. Such a place was complex, yet simple, because memories had already fused into every part of his soul and heavenly soul. The only way was to let his consciousness give up the entire heavenly soul and become a true existence drifting in the void. At that time, the consciousness would only have the simplest reactions of an intelligent being, because everything would have been forgotten, including the ability to recognize anything. Long Luzi used his spiritual energy to condense something like a spring track at his heavenly soul. The beginning of this track was his heavenly soul, and the end was also his heavenly soul. The purpose of creating this track was to ensure that after his consciousness left the heavenly soul, it would automatically return to it by following the guidance of the track. If the consciousness could not return, then Long Luzi himself would be finished. After making all the preparations, Long Luzi no longer hesitated. He directly let his consciousness give up all the powers attached to it. Afterward, Long Luzi forgot everything. As he entered the track, his consciousness became chaotic. He didn't know who he was, where he was going, or what he was doing. Meanwhile, far away, the current true Dragon Emperor had just completed the condensation of the devouring dragon palm. However, before that strike could be unleashed, it mysteriously vanished, and similarly, the current true Dragon Emperor also disappeared.